Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 279 was completely reshuffled today in an unprecedented turn of events. Khamzat Chimaev misses weight, and all of the top 3 fights got shuffled around on the card. 6 fighters get new opponents. That's absolute insanity. Has never happened in UFC history, especially 24 hours before an event. And the second the news that Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz was canceled, there was already some conspiracy theories floating around online. One being, did Khamzat Chimaev intentionally miss weight so he could fight Kevin Holland because they had that pre-fight press conference scuffle? There's been another conspiracy theory that the Khamzat Chimaev and the UFC conspired together for him to intentionally miss weight so they could reshuffle around the card and basically increase pay-per-view buys and also just get more eyeballs on the card, because the media coverage of this weigh-in day for UFC 279 was absolute insanity. It's definitely gotten more eyeballs on this card. So I'm going to answer the question, are either one of those conspiracy theories legitimate, and do they have any actual validity? And then also towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you my opinion on what I think actually happened at UFC 279 with Khamzat Chimaev. So first off, in the first weird set of circumstances, you had the UFC 279 pre-fight press conference where you have the top 6 fighters come out on stage and they answer questions from media and sometimes fans, and they're always late, and this press conference was particularly late, and it ends up getting canceled. Now, we never got any real official word on what actually happened, but basically on all the reports and all the inside sources, the information we got was basically there was no real punches or kicks thrown. Essentially, between Diaz, Holland, and Chimaev, they were yelling at each other, throwing water bottles, and at one point, Khamzat Chimaev and Kevin Holland pushed each other. But there was really no legitimate altercation, because I know a lot of people are saying, where's the video footage of this? And maybe some of it will come out on the embedded. But it was really a non-story. I talked about it in another video I did on the UFC 279 presser. I'll link my entire UFC 279 pre-fight playlist down in the description if you guys want to go check that out. But people are wondering, now that Khamzat Chimaev and Kevin Holland had this scuffle, could it be possible that, you know what, Khamzat said, you know what, I don't want to fight Nate Diaz. I want to fight Kevin Holland. And conveniently enough, and I know all these circumstances sound super convenient for Khamzat Chimaev and the UFC, but conveniently enough, Kevin Holland, what weight is he scheduled to fight at? He's fighting at a catch weight of 180 pounds against Daniel Rodriguez. So you have the whole pre-fight presser debacle. The press conference gets canceled. You have Khamzat Chimaev, Nate Diaz, and Kevin Holland all in some type of altercation, throwing water bottles. And now you get to weigh-in day. And it was speculated very, very early that Khamzat Chimaev was going to miss weight. And people were still wondering what was going to happen. But basically now we know, as recently as 8 o'clock this morning, they knew that Khamzat Chimaev was going to miss weight. And even 4 o'clock this morning, really, that Khamzat Chimaev was going to miss weight. Because it came out that a doctor went and saw Khamzat Chimaev at 4 o'clock in the morning, and basically he was having problems with his weight cut, and they told him to stop cutting weight. He says he wanted to continue, but they insisted that he stop cutting weight, which obviously if they're advising him not to continue cutting weight, there must be some serious issues going on with his weight cut. And the UFC knew this. The UFC knew Khamzat was going to miss weight, and they knew that there was no way that Nate Diaz was going to take this fight, especially with a massive weight miss like Khamzat Chimaev, about 8.5 pounds he missed weight by, which is just insanity. But if Khamzat Chimaev would have missed by 0.5 of a pound, Nate Diaz would have not taken this fight either way. I know he kind of gets away with it because now it's this massive weight miss. Nate Diaz, and rightfully so, would have not taken this fight regardless of the amount of weight cut that Khamzat Chimaev missed out on. And you look at Khamzat Chimaev, he misses weight. They knew he was going to miss weight, at 4 o'clock in the morning. The UFC and Khamzat knew he was going to miss weight. He weighs in, I think, at something like 12 or 1 p.m. on the East Coast. And what does he do? He goes out there, he holds his hands up in the air, then he flips off the media, and then he goes back and he gets on Twitter and he tweets out this meme basically blaming Darren Till for his weight cut. And then he goes into the weigh-ins and he basically flips off the crowd for booing him. A lot of people are disappointed that Chimaev versus Diaz got canceled. And they're thinking the way he's acting is not the way someone would act if they felt bad about missing weight. And there's also the information, and this is highly speculative. It's been circulating online that Khamzat Chimaev was out eating and drinking the night before UFC 279 weigh-ins. Like, he already knew the night before that he was going to miss weight. And the first conspiracy theory I want to talk about is the Kevin Holland conspiracy theory. Because now they have this bad blood. Khamzat Chimaev has shown to be very emotional. We've seen the altercation at the UFC PI between Chimaev and Costa as well. And now we find out him and Holland get into this altercation at the pre-fight presser. And did he know after that altercation, he said, you know what? I am going to miss weight so that I can fight Kevin Holland instead. And I think this, I don't think it's completely crazy to believe this. I don't think it's completely implausible. People make crazy decisions all the time. But when you start looking at all the different factors surrounding this, I just find it hard to believe that Khamzat Chimaev would turn up a Nate Diaz fight, because Nate Diaz is a massive star. Regardless of what people think before the fight, if Khamzat Chimaev goes out there and dominates Nate Diaz, which many of us believed he would, then that increases his star power substantially. And to go fight Kevin Holland and miss out on this opportunity for an easy fight against Nate Diaz, and to build your star power, which is basically going to help grow exponentially your future earnings in the UFC, it would not be a smart decision whatsoever to do that. So I do not believe that Khamzat Chimaev intentionally missed weight to fight Kevin Holland. If he wanted to fight Kevin Holland, he could have called him out after beating Nate Diaz. Why would he give up this massive opportunity to get so many eyeballs on him in his first ever main event just because of some petty altercation at the pre-fight press conference with Kevin Holland? So I do not believe that conspiracy theory at all. I think it's completely false. I understand why people are speculating on it. It does kind of fall together, but there's no way I believe that's actually what went down. The second conspiracy theory is a combination of a bunch of different factors, but essentially the synopsis of it is the UFC and Khamzat Chimaev decided together, Khamzat Chimaev and Dana White were in a back room at the Apex somewhere, and they decided Khamzat Chimaev is going to miss weight because UFC 279 is not getting a lot of buzz. If he misses weight, there'll be a lot of buzz around it, and then they can reshuffle the card, and they can make the new matchups between Chimaev and Holland, Rodriguez and Li Jingliang, and Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz. And this is a more universally loved card. I hated UFC 279 as it was before. And I do agree this is a much better card, and I do believe that the eyeballs that this whole scenario has gotten on the card will probably increase pay-per-view sales. For 100% fact, I think it will increase pay-per-view sales. But do I believe that the UFC and Khamzat intentionally conspired for him to miss weight just so they could get some extra pay-per-view buys? It's kind of hard to believe. I don't think the UFC is this smart. I think people are giving the UFC too much credit. And on top of that, how many pay-per-views do you really think reshuffling this card is going to add? I don't know that it's such a substantial amount that it would be worth doing this, because guess what? 6 fighters now took short notice fights against different opponents on 24 hours notice. Now, maybe they don't give Khamzat Chimaev any extra money because it's all his fault. But you bet Kevin Holland's getting more money. You bet Nate Diaz is getting more money. You bet Tony Ferguson's getting more money. You bet Daniel Rodriguez and Li Jingliang are getting more money. How much money? I don't know. But that would almost definitely cancel out any potential extra profit that the UFC would make off of pay-per-view buys. And that doesn't even bring into, the factor of the UFC doesn't make any money off UFC pay-per-view buys. ESPN Plus pays the UFC a flat rate every year, and ESPN Plus collects all the money from the pay-per-view buys. And also, that right there alone basically disproves the fact that they're shuffling it around for more pay-per-view buys. And I understand they still care about pay-per-view buys because they want to have a good relationship with ESPN. But Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz was probably going to do around the same amount of pay-per-view buys that the current card is. Maybe the current card gets, a little bit more, but not a lot. I believe it will get a little bit more just because of the interest that it has garnered, but it's not going to be substantial. It's not going to be substantial enough. And then you take in the fact that Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz was put together because the UFC was pissed at Nate Diaz for not signing a contract extension. This is the last fight on his UFC contract. And the UFC and Dana White wanted Khamzat Chimaev to go out there and smash Nate Diaz into oblivion so they could devalue him as much as possible on his way out of the UFC. And I do not believe, even if you want to say that this new reshuffling of the card, let's just make up a number. Let's say it earns the UFC $10 million more for the fact that they reshuffled this card around and now it's more universally loved than it was before. I've never seen MMA fans agree. I mean, we disagree on literally everything. This new card is universally loved. So let's say it makes an extra $10 million. I do not believe the UFC and Dana White would be willing to trade $10 million to not see Khamzat Chimaev smash Nate Diaz. I think they would rather lose that extra $10 million and watch Chimaev smash Diaz because Dana White and the UFC are just that petty. They would rather devalue Nate Diaz as much as possible. I mean, the only reason this fight is happening is because he refused to sign a contract extension. I mean, he's been trying to fight since June of 2021. He's not fighting until September of 2022. And this fight was kind of thrown together, I don't want to say on short notice, but roughly 6 to 7 weeks notice that this main event was announced. And that's another reason that Khamzat potentially could have missed weight, which we'll talk about in a second. The real reason I believe that Khamzat Chimaev missed weight. But I just don't believe, unless you're really talking about, 30, 40, 50 million, I think Dana White and the UFC would take that trade-off in a heartbeat just to watch Khamzat Chimaev feast on the carcass of Nate Diaz. I really, truly believe that. So I do not believe that the UFC somehow behind the scenes orchestrated this entire thing for Khamzat Chimaev to miss weight so that they could shuffle the card around and get, Chimaev Holland, Diaz Ferguson, and Daniel Rodriguez, Li Jingliang. I don't think they did that at all. I understand why people could think it, but I just don't think it's possible. So that begs the question, what really happened? And actually, before I even get into what really happened, the only conspiracy theory I think could even be potentially true, and I don't think this one's true either, and this one's kind of for fun. This is one that I actually thought of, but I've seen some other people speculated on it as well. Maybe Khamzat Chimaev actually likes Nate Diaz. And the UFC was saying, you know what, we need you to go out there and smash this guy. And Khamzat Chimaev didn't really want to do it to Nate Diaz, who's a legend in the sport. So maybe Khamzat by himself made the decision to intentionally miss weight so he didn't have to go out there and destroy Nate Diaz at UFC 279. I don't think that's true. It just wouldn't make sense. He would make too much money, build his star power too much. There's too many motives for Khamzat to make the Diaz fight that I just don't believe that one either. But I wanted to mention that as well. So that gets us to what really happened. Why did Khamzat Chimaev actually miss weight by such a substantial amount? When you miss weight by this much, it's not a miscalculation. So that's why people are so kind of, raising their eyebrows at this, because they're like, how do you miss weight by 8 pounds or over 8 pounds, I believe it was. And what I think actually happened, and this is a problem in the UFC that I think goes on far too much, and we don't hear enough about it. I think what happened is Khamzat Chimaev has some type of minor injury coming into this fight, and I believe he wasn't able to cut weight adequately. And I believe as of a week ago, as of 2 weeks ago, as of a month ago, whenever he originally got this injury, I believe that the UFC and Khamzat Chimaev have been in contact about it. I believe Chimaev believed that he would be able to make the weight. And up until the day before the UFC weigh-ins, they didn't realize, he's not going to be able to do it. And, when he starts cutting this weight and his body starts shutting down, because right now that's the reasoning. Apparently Khamzat Chimaev's body started shutting down. He started cramping up. The doctor looked at him and called it, said, you know what? You're not cutting any more weight. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, apparently in the hotel room. I really just believe that Chimaev, the UFC, and his entire team, I think they knew that Khamzat was injured, but they thought he would make the weight anyway. And they thought so little of Nate Diaz's skill set that they said, you know what, we can go in and beat this guy up even though we're injured. And I really think that's the simplest explanation, and I think that's the explanation that is true. But they didn't realize that they were going to end up having problems as they started to cut weight. And his body shut down, and the doctor just said, you know what, you can't cut weight anymore. Because they didn't want to risk Khamzat Chimaev having to pull out of the card entirely. And that would have been an even bigger catastrophe if Khamzat Chimaev had to completely pull out of UFC 279, because then you leave 5 guys behind on the top 3 fights of the card. And what does that mean? That means one of the top 3 fights would have been canceled. This is already a lackluster pay-per-view. The UFC could not afford for that to happen. They knew they had Daniel Rodriguez versus Kevin Holland at a catchweight. They knew that they could pay either Holland or Rodriguez enough to take the Chimaev fight. And they said, you know what? It is what it is. We're going to take some heat in the press, but we're going to get a lot of attention. People wanted the Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson fight anyway, so we can sell that on pay-per-view, make that the main event, and then we'll book Chimaev versus Holland, and hopefully it's not a complete catastrophe. And I believe that this is the best thing that could happen for all the fans. I think it's good for the UFC as well, because this is the card we really deserved. We deserve to see Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson before these guys are no longer in the UFC. This is a fight that I've dreamed of for many years, and I cannot believe on 24 hours notice this fight comes together. Thank you to the MMA gods. But I believe really that's the simplest explanation. He was injured. He thought he could cut the weight. It ended up being that he could not cut the weight. The UFC pulled the plug before Khamzat got too deep into the weight cut that it was going to be an issue where he couldn't fight at all. And I think that's the real reason that Khamzat Chimaev missed weight at UFC 279. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.